So friends, today we are discussing sociological perspectives. We are not discussing any particular substantive issue. There is a thinking, layman's thinking, that sociology is about society, human behavior. And you know that sociologists study things like family, political institutions, religion, social stratification. But the most crucial aspect of studying sociology is how do they study these things. And when we look at what is unique to sociology, religion, family, politics, these are also the things which are studied by everyone, all social scientists, anthropologists, historians, psychologists. So today I will focus more on what is so unique about sociology, or what are the perspectives which sociologists use in studying various parts of society, society as a whole, different institutions of society, social change and social processes. The perspectives are functionalism, Marxism, symbolic interactionism and ethnomethodology. These are not the only perspectives. If you read recent advancements in sociological research, you can find many other and newer perspectives have been added in the kit of sociologists. Feminism, postmodernism. There is another variety of symbolic interactionism. It is called structural symbolic interactionism. You also come across terms like structuralism or attempts to combine two or more perspectives. Like one sociologist, Giddens, tried to combine methodological individualism and structuralism, and this resulted in a perspective called structuration. But my focus, because this is a course in elementary sociology, this is an introductory sociology course, so I will not be very abstract and just introduce 4 different ways of looking at social reality which are most common in sociological research: functionalism and Marxism and symbolic interactionism, and lastly ethnomethodology. The functionalism treats society as the unit of analysis, whole society. Functionalism, unit of analysis is society. What is society? Society as a system of interconnected parts, society having certain needs, society adapting to ecological or environmental changes, and relationships between different societies. So functionalism looks at society as a system. Most sociologists which are discussed in elementary books of sociology are functionalists. One sociologist, Haralambous, said that till the year, say 1950, in the first part of the last century, functionalism was the most common strand in sociology in United States. Gradually it has given way to Marxism, feminism, symbolic interactionism, and things have been changing. But it does not mean that functionalism has died. Many very well-known sociologists still look at social phenomena in functional perspective. I would even say that functionalism goes more with managerial perspective. So, in socialist countries also, or after the revolution, when a new revolutionary group has taken over in socialist countries, they aim at economic and social development of the country, raising power of the country at the international level. Whether they call it functionalist paradigm or not, they also start using some kind of functionalist paradigm. They may not call it because they are Marxist socialists, so they will hate to use the term functionalism. But perspectives of all managers of society will always be functionalist. Because the common thing to functional perspective is concerned about the larger society, and to see society as consisting of interconnected parts, or to use a systems approach for analysis of society. The major names in functional perspective: George Peter Murdoch, who contributed to studies of family; Auguste Comte, who gave the concept of positivism and that social phenomena must be studied empirically and scientifically; Kingsley Davis gave the concept of status, role, social stratification. He studied virtually everything, but he is more known for his theory of social stratification. He has also studied urbanization in later years. So, urbanization and development. In his basic book, Human Society, there is also a mention of mental health. Wilbert Moore, Kingsley Davis, Wilbert Moore, these are two people who came up with a theory of social stratification. Emile Durkheim, who gave the concept of collective consciousness, that there is an external social force outside our ego, outside our individual mind, which exerts influence on our mind and our behavior. That is collective consciousness. So, there is not only a consciousness of an individual, but in society there is also a consciousness of the entire society. And actually it is the consciousness of the entire society which affects individuals' consciousness. That is Emile Durkheim. Emile Durkheim has also contributed to research on deviance, though he is more known for his studies of suicide and religion, elementary forms of religious life. This was one of his most known of research works, and suicide, in which he is trying to compare suicide rates with time, status, money, urban and rural areas, civilians and armed forces, males and females, Catholics and Protestants, and trying to develop his theory of suicide by saying that suicide is a function of presence or absence of social integration. Actually, all these functionalists like Emile Durkheim have some idea of equilibrium or normality. That's normal. When our relationship with larger society is normal, we are healthy. And when we identify too strongly with larger society, so strongly that we are ready to sacrifice our own interests, or we do not identify with society at all, a stage of alienation, separation, disintegration, anomie, then that affects our health, mental health, and that can take people to commit the act of suicide. So, in all functionalist writings, there is an emphasis on order, because this uses systems approach. So, there is an order, the concept of equilibrium, the concept of relationship, and normalcy. As long as our relationship with society is normal, we are physically and mentally healthy. When it is too much or it is absent, then we may become prone to commit suicide, means that can lead to some kind of deviant behavior. Herbert Spencer has talked about social evolution as from a simple amoeba, a complex biological organism develops from cells to animals, human beings, physical, mental, such a complex biological mechanism, anatomy, physiology, from very simple cells, sometimes from amoeba. All these complex structures have developed. Likewise, in society also, from a simple, undifferentiated, primitive society develops a complex, post-modern, advanced modern, industrial, post-industrial society. And Herbert Spencer and theories of his type would be interested in understanding how does a primitive society changes to a complex, differentiated, doubly differentiated, triply different, a complex, how does a very complex society like post-industrial and postmodern society develop. Spencer was as such not writing about postmodern. These terms, post-industrial, postmodern, are later day additions to sociological literature. But the idea is that Herbert Spencer would like to understand the process of change from a simple to differentiated society. And he could imagine that the degree of differentiation would increase further. A society would become more and more differentiated, and so more and more integrated also at a higher level of abstraction. Talcott Parsons, he has contributed to almost all areas of sociology. And today, while talking about functionalism, I will just touch upon two important contributions of Talcott Parsons. One, that he says that like individual organisms, societies also have certain needs, because he is a functionalist. Talcott Parsons is known for his theory of social action, and in theory of social action, he considers personality, biological system, social system, and cultural system. And he says that all these systems, social, cultural, biological, and personality, can be seen as divided into four. One he calls adaptation. This is, I am talking about Talcott Parsons. This helps us actually in understanding how does functionalist mind work. Functionalist mind takes society as the unit of analysis and looks at order, equilibrium, system, interconnections, adaptation, survival, sustenance of society. So for any society, there are four most important rules of survival, or four most important needs of society. Adaptation. Second, goal attainment. third, integration, and fourth, pattern maintenance. Which is also called latency. And by taking first letter from each, you have AGIL. Talcott Parsons is known for his contribution of AGIL. All societies have these needs. Adaptation. First of all, society and its members should exist. So food, shelter, other physical and economic needs of society must be satisfied. This is what adaptation is. Society should, first of all, society and its members should exist. The most important of all the needs of society would then be food, shelter, other physical needs, some kind of safety, shelter, and in general economic needs. So you can call adaptation economic function also. For society to survive, it is important to effectively, efficiently maintain its economic system. No society can survive if there is problem on economic front. Most important need of society. Then goal attainment. Goal attainment means politics. There must be some goals towards which members of society must be directed. People survive. After they are sure of survival, when the members of society are confident about survival, means when the society has adapted to environmental conditions and food, shelter, other physical needs, economic needs in general are satisfied, then people do not exist for surviving only. People do not exist for eating only, or people do not exist only to construct houses. They want something else, some direction, some goal, some future, some destination. What does our society stand for? What are we looking for? Our short-term and long-term goals, long-term, short-term goals of people, of society. So society needs a mechanism, some institution through which values of the members of society or values of the society are articulated. That is political. The main aim of political institution is to articulate the value system of society. Value in the sense of where does society want to go? Goal. What is the goal of this society? For what purpose is a country, a society, a collectivity, a caste, a community, even a person, personality? Why does one person exist? We do not exist. If somebody asks you, why do you exist? Why do you exist? You would not say that I exist to eat. By eating, by living in a good house, by having good clothes, by having decent income, you exist, no doubt. That is important for existing. But you do not exist to live in a good house. You do not exist to eat food only. You must have a goal. And for society, this goal is goal attainment is the job of political institutions. So all societies will have to have some form of political institution through which the goals of society are articulated. Then in any society consisting of so many people. Indian society, more than 1 billion people today live in Indian society. There are possibilities of conflicts. Conflicts between individuals, conflicts between groups, conflicts between different regions, different cultural, linguistic areas, Hindus and Muslims, conflicts between males and females, conflicts in the interest of old people and in the interest of young people. So some way has to be found to resolve the possibilities of conflicts in society. This is to look at society in a functional perspective, that people must exist, so must have food. There must be some goal for which people or societies or communities are living, and there must be a mechanism to resolve conflicts. Conflicts are very much a possibility. Conflicts resolution. You can say that this is the job of the legal institutions. So all societies must have an institution resembling the legal institution. Or you can, different countries may have different legal institutions, that is not important. In some countries there is a written constitution, in some countries there is only a tradition or unwritten constitution, and the forms that Supreme Court, high courts or courts, lower courts, higher courts take may also be different. Sometimes you have only a panchayat to implement traditional laws or customs. Sometimes you have very elaborate mechanisms, as in our country, from lower court to Supreme Court. And then benches. One judge declaring a verdict or a bench of judges. When issues are more complicated or more complex, more important, then not one judge, but a bench of 2 or more judges will take the decision. So you need, forms may be different, but all societies will need a mechanism of integration, because conflicts are a reality. Functionalists like Talcott, Parsons would also not deny the possibility of existence of conflicts in society. But what they believe in, that because there is a possibility of conflict, so in all societies there is also an institution which specializes or whose job is to resolve conflicts as and when they arise. Various types of conflicts. Conflicts between industry and labor, capital and labor, urban and rural, tribals, non-tribals, educated, uneducated, high income group, low income group, various types of conflicts. And lastly, there has to be something which provides stability to society. To provide stability, you have to have some institution to maintain the values pattern. So all societies must have something of this kind, cultural or religious, something which maintains the value system of society and to provide stability to society. Now, one may say in our context that Hinduism or certain varieties of Hinduism have provided stability to a large, complex, diversified, heterogeneous society like India. India was never a nation of the type we are today, but there was a cultural unity. In the entire Indian, so-called Indian subcontinent, there was a kind of cultural unity which provides for the stability of society. All societies have something like this. This is functional way. Let me repeat that functionalists make the whole society as the unit of analysis. Their issues and concerns are about society. How does society survive? How does society maintain itself? Or at the time of change, how does society change? What forces lead to change? Without leading to any breakdown of society. So if there is a disequilibrium somewhere, it's only a temporary disequilibrium. Eventually, because of the internal resilience of society and social processes, a re-equilibrium is established. Talcott Parsons. Now, one interesting thing I find in Talcott Parsons, that because Talcott Parsons is one of the most recent of all the functional sociologists, so he was also able to see that modern society is not same as the traditional society was. Although he believes in functionalism and also he believes in stability and interconnections and correlations between different things, but he knows that society has changed. Talcott Parsons gives certain pattern variables, and he says that this is how we can look at social change. A traditional society or pre-modern society, the chief characteristics of traditional society are affectivity, diffuseness, particularism, ascription, and collective orientation. A traditional society is marked by affectivity, diffuseness, particularism, ascription, and collective orientation. These are the patterns of relation. These characteristics describe the pattern of relationships in a traditional society. Now, just opposite of that, a modern society or industrial society is characterized by reverse of them. In place of affectivity, you have affective neutrality. In place of diffuseness, you have specificity. I will explain this in a moment. Particularism, universalism. Ascription to achievement and collective orientation to self-orientation. This is, so although a modern society is different from a traditional society, an industrial society is different from agrarian, agricultural society or primitive society, but there is a pattern. Characteristics have changed, but patterns, there are certain pattern behaviors. Or there is a pattern, there is an underlying unity of values, value systems, orientations, which can be described in terms of these things. In traditional society, affectivity, modern society, affective neutrality. The term affection is used for emotions. In a traditional society or in a traditional system, actually in terms of these things, you can also compare relatively more traditional institution and modern institution, family and corporate world. In family, your relationships are emotional. In the corporate world, your relationships are governed by affective neutrality. There is no emotion. Your relationships are based on calculations, rationality. In modern society, workers do not sacrifice their life for the corporate world. In the same manner in which, say, Lakshman sort of sacrificed his life for his elder brother Ram. Going to forest for 14 years to provide safety and security to elder brother was also making a sacrifice. And that sacrifice was emotional. Or Sita going along with Ram to forest. Sita, who had never seen any forest, who was born and brought up in a family of powerful kings and enjoyed all the facilities, comforts of life from the beginning. Traditional society, affectivity. Relationships are quite affective. You must have heard that in people saying that in villages earlier, everybody connected with other members of the village emotionally. Even to those people with whom you were not directly connected through any kind of economic or political interest. You call them uncles or aunts or grandfather or grandmother. All were the members of the same family, emotionally connected. In traditional society, you are emotionally connected. In modern society, emotions are not important. In a way, more you become neutral to affects or emotions, more modern you are. Some people think that modernity is about rationality. You become rational. You do not remain emotional. The kind of stories we hear about friends in traditional society in old days, we do not have friends of those types today. Today's friendship is more rational, calculative. You make friends because they can give you photocopies of notes. There is no emotion. In traditional society, I don't know if somebody has seen a picture like Dost. Now, the concept of Dost or friend, which was part of traditional society, you do not have friends of that type anymore. So, affectivity to affective neutrality. Then, earlier relationships are diffuse. Today, relationships are specific. Relationship in the family context was diffuse. Father was everything. Father was protector, father was employer, father was teacher, father was a religious guru, and father was the political head of the family, everything. Diffuse. Diffuse means everything, anything, everything. But today our relationships are very, very specific, very specific. Your relationship with a shopkeeper, your relationship with a teacher, your relationship with warden, your relationship with friend, your relationship with your employer, your immediate boss, your subordinates, they are specific relationships. Earlier they were diffuse. But there is some kind of pattern. Talcott Parsons is more concerned about the presence of certain patterns. Patterns are different, but there are patterns. Rules of the game is specific. Relationship is specific. Earlier it was diffuse. Particularism, our orientations were particularistic in the sense we worked in the interest of certain persons, groups, subgroups, communities, family first, then maybe caste, then maybe the village identity. So family identity, caste identity, village identity, religious identity, particular. And today's value orientations are universal, means global. So the concerns, issues and the yardsticks of today are global. What is right for one person is right for the entire world. Rise of humanism, universalism. What are seen as needs of some specific individuals are also seen as needs of the whole humanity. And earlier, roles were allocated on the basis of ascription, in which family you are born. Today, roles are achieved. You can look at the entire course of sociology. There is a big shift from ascription to achievement. And in jobs mainly, because job is the major role of industrial modern society. So job is achieved on the basis of your education, credentials, your merit, your own physical and mental achievements, characteristics, and collective orientation to self-orientation. While societies of the past were collectively oriented, means people stood to attain the goals of the larger collectivities. You did not have any private life. In modern society, orientation, predominant orientation is self. It does not mean that social identities have gone. Social identities are there, and quite often our behavior reflects our identity. But there is much more of personal or self, more concerned about self, more concerned about your own interests rather than the interest of the collectivity. We can go on, but my main concern is to tell you how do functionalists work, how do functionalists think. And the example of Talcott Parsons says that functionalists are interested in understanding the needs of larger society. For them, society is a real entity, and there are certain needs of society. AGIL, adaptation, goal attainment, integration and latency. These are the needs of society, and therefore societies have to develop appropriate mechanism of all these types within biological systems, cultural systems, social systems and personality. And although these people, Talcott, Parsons and people of his type, do believe in social change, but they say that behind change there is some kind of constancy behind all kinds of society. There is some kind of pattern of values. There is a pattern of values. There is an order. There is a kind of equilibrium. For example, when I wrote ascription, diffuseness, particularism, you can see that this is a set, a cluster of certain values. In a modern society, if you are modern otherwise, but in place of affective neutrality, you go by affection, there will be chaos. So this is a set of interconnected, integrated values. There is one set for traditional society, another set for modern society. In modern society, you cannot afford to have, or people do not have, the collective orientation. In modern society, you are tremendously concerned about yourself. That is at the root of modern society. You are concerned about yourself. In traditional society, it is collective orientation. You live for society, you live for your culture, you live for your religion, you live for your family. Now, the same thing has been expressed by another sociologist, a very important name, R.K. Merton, Robert Merton. And actually, I wanted to spend more time on Merton than on Talcott Parsons. Merton has some important contribution to understand some of the present day institutions, including social stratification and so on. I will first say what Merton said and then apply this to something. One thing he said that the functionalist positions or the functionalist thinking in sociology is governed by three postulates. So first, like a teacher, first Merton is summarizing what is functionalist thinking. And then he makes some contribution of his own to functional theory, which has been found to be quite important by present day sociologists. One he calls postulate of functional unity of society. Postulate of functional unity of society. Second, postulate of universal functionalism. And third, postulate of indispensability. This is not Merton's own contribution. First, Merton is saying that if you read the works of functional sociologists, you find that all of them tend to make three postulates. One, postulate of functional unity of society. I think by now you understand what this functional unity of society means. This means that all the parts of society, all the components of society, all the institutions of society, groups, subgroups of society are interconnected, which means change in one part or one group or one institution leads to change in other parts. So industrialization leads to change in social stratification. Urbanization leads to economic development. Urbanization leads to modernization, westernization. Westernization leads to secularization. Secularization, westernization produce demographic transition. Everything is interconnected. Education makes it rational. Rationality produces a self-orientation rather than collective orientation, affective neutrality, and so the demographic transition. Everything is interconnected. Postulate of functional unity of society means society is a unity, and that unity is functional. Here the term function means relationship, correlations. Everything is a function of everything else. Long back in his positivism, Auguste Comte said that one thing of society is related to another thing of society. Emile Durkheim, social facts. For Emile Durkheim, all patterns of thinking, behaving or acting or feeling are social facts, all patterns. When there are patterns of thinking, feeling, acting, believing, they are facts outside us. And one fact is related to another fact. This is the positivist and functionalist methodology, relating one thing to other. So, there is a postulate of functional unity. One thing changes, everything changes. Change in one part of society, cultural lag, there may be some lag, there may be some social lag, and one part of society, one group of society, one institution of society may change faster than the others. But eventually, all others will change. All others have changed, there is a period of maladjustment. And this maladjustment creates social problems. Postulate of universal functionalism means that anything that exists in society is sort of useful, in simple language, is useful. It exists because it is the need of society. Anything that exists. That means anything that exists has some positive functions. If poverty exists, poverty must be having some useful consequences for the larger society. If casteism exists, it must be having some function. Anything. You may think that it is bad, but actually if you analyze it carefully, you will find that everything has a function. And that function is for the entire society. Everybody is gaining. And postulate of indispensability means if the whole society is a system of interconnected parts, one thing changes, everything changes kind of. And if anything that exists because it is functional, it has positive consequences for the larger society. So, does that not create the idea that everything that exists is indispensable? Because everything that exists has a function. So, that means no other thing can take its place. It is indispensable. It must remain. It will remain and it must remain. So, some people find that despite so much political, economic attack on poverty, poverty has persisted for long, for hundreds of years, thousands of years, lakhs of years. Poverty has not vanished. Social stratification has not vanished. Social inequality remains. So, then it means that poverty and social stratification must be indispensable. Without them, society cannot exist. According to Merton, all functionalists tend to make these three postulates. But Merton says that we need to have a relook at some of them. First of all, he makes a distinction between functions, dysfunctions, and non-functions. This is his contribution. It's not from commonsensical point of view, it's not a great contribution. What he's saying that anything that exists has functions as well as dysfunctions and non-functions. Everything that exists need not be having only positive functions. There may be some harmful functions also. If functionalism is about relationships or correlations, some of the correlations or some of the consequences or some of the implications of things existing in society may be negative, wrong, dysfunctions. There may be functions, there may be dysfunctions. And some functions which are neither good nor bad, neither functions nor dysfunctions, so non-functions. And second, second, micro and macro functionalism. This means that the level of analysis can be made the larger society, macro, then you are looking at the macro functions, or it can be a smaller group or subgroup of society also, micro, as micro as an individual. The level of analysis in Merton's functionalism shifts from or includes both macro and micro. And third thing he says that things may not be indispensable in the sense that there may be functional alternatives for them. Let me repeat and then give a small example and then I will stop here. First, Merton says that if you review the works done by those with whom we attach the label of functionalism, their works are guided by three postulates. One is the postulate of functional unity of society. That means society is a system of integrated parts, and whenever anything changes because of correlations between different parts, different groups, different institutions, when one thing changes, all other things are likely to change. When will they change? In 1 month, 2 months, 1 year, 10 years? That depends, but change in one thing is going to produce change in everything. Functional unity. And as against this, Merton says that I do not agree with this position of functionalist. Although R.K. Merton himself is a functionalist, but he says that the functionalists need to revisit their theories and have a relook at their postulates. I do not agree that when something changes, then everything changes, because we have to analyze changes at the aggregate level, macro level, societal level, and at the level of parts separately. Micro-functionalism, macro-functionalism. So for Merton, although Merton remains in the framework of functionalism, but suppose you are analyzing Indian society, or suppose you are analyzing religion, then what kind of change in one part of society is producing has to be analyzed separately at different levels, at the level of larger society as well as at the level of subgroups or different institutions or at the level of individuals. And all the effects at the level of society, at the level of regions, at the level of groups, at the level of individual need not be same. Macro and micro. Economic development of India may have separate effects on society of Kerala, society of Uttar Pradesh, on Hindus, on Muslims, on forward classes and backward classes, on urban areas and rural areas, and the impact of modernization and development may be different for different individuals. So macro and micro. Do you understand? The one thing he says that the level of analysis need to be explicitly a macro and also a micro, different. We have to analyze effects at different levels. Second thing, while most functionalists believe in postulate of universal functionalism, means, okay, so micro, macro, this takes care of. that the effects may be same or different. Here we also have to, once we analyze the effects separately at the aggregate level and at the level of groups or institutions or individuals, we must recognize that some effects may be good, you can call them functions, some effects may be bad or dysfunctions, and some may be non-functions. So economic development of the country, like India, when we talk of economic development of the whole nation, economic development of India has been functional for certain states. For Punjab, Haryana, agriculturally advanced state, for Gujarat and Maharashtra, industrially advanced states, it's functional. But economic development of India has been dysfunctional for Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, maybe in certain respects for the northeastern region, where you have more alienation, Naxalites, secessionist activities, separatist tendencies. The effect of economic development has not been same for all. Economic development, effect of economic development has been functional for bureaucrats, administrators, political elite, feudal elite in rural areas, and dysfunctional for those illiterate, people belonging to lower castes, rural areas, landless laborers, and scheduled tribes, dysfunctional for scheduled tribes. So effects may be positive as well as negative, and there may be certain things which have neither a positive effect nor a negative effect. And functional alternatives. This is for this postulate, postulate of indispensability. Things are, somebody may say like poverty, somebody may say that poverty exists because it is functional. Why is it functional? Because it has certain religious functions associated with it. Charity or voluntary poverty or helping the poor, through these things you are religious merit. But that Merton says it does not mean that poverty should always remain, that it is indispensable. For religious and spiritual development or moral development, you can have alternative ideas, alternative institutions, alternative ideas. It is not necessary for mankind to keep some people poor so that you can engage in charity. Almost all religions, like Christianity, saying that wealth is bad, wealth is sin, to earn wealth is to earn sin. Islam also says that you cannot be loyal simultaneously to both Allah and the material world. You cannot be. You cannot serve both. You cannot serve the spirit, you cannot serve the God, Allah, God. You cannot be spiritual and materialist at the same time. And Hinduism also says something of similar kind, that ठीक है, you earn wealth, but your earning of wealth should be done in a manner which is not inconsistent with dharma. Dharma, artha, kama, moksha. There are 4 purusharthas. Merton will say that to earn purushartha or to live a moral or dharmic or religious or spiritual life, it is not necessary that we maintain poverty in society. By an alternative philosophy, functional alternatives, different things. The function that one existing institution or group or part of society perform can be performed by many alternative parts, or groups or institutions. So it is wrong to say that if something exists and it is functional for the larger society, then it must continue. Okay. I think it is clear, and in open discussion later on in tutorial, things will be made more clear. Merton first presents 3 postulates which will show his understanding of functionalism, and then he attacks each of them by saying that there may be dysfunctions along with functions. Reality at the macro level may not be same as reality at the micro level, and you cannot take the position that if something is existing, it must continue to exist because it is functional. There may be other possibilities of getting the same functions which some of the existing institutions or groups or components provide. We stop here then.